Let's connect with that desire in your body and leave everyone else's opinions and thoughts on the outside and just feel into who you want to show up as and who you want to be in the world.
Welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm Emily, a divorced mom of two on my own journey to shine a little brighter. This podcast is here to help you protect your sparkle amidst the chaos and impossible expectations of modern motherhood. If you're a mom ready to choose yourself and shine, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. There is a disconnection from self that happens for so many of us, sometimes in tandem with motherhood, but often also much before that. And it's not random that this disconnection happens, but we don't have to live in that place of disconnection. There's work we can do to reconnect with ourselves and our innate power. And that is what our guest today is here to help us do. Joining me today is Sara Putney. Sara is a certified trauma-informed somatic breathwork facilitator. She is also a mom and the host of the Modern Matriarch Podcast. Sara, welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm so happy to have you here. Can you just go ahead and introduce yourself and give us just a little overview of who you are, your family, and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So I'll start by saying at the time of this recording, I'm a mom of a 3.5-year-old little girl. And my journey into the work I do now starts from when I was a little girl. So my biological parents were addicts and alcoholics. And at the age of 6 weeks old, I was actually removed from their custody and was raised by a single mom. And she had a lot of her own trauma that she didn't address or navigate. So growing up was really hard, not only from my genetics and the generational trauma that comes from that, but also just being raised by a single mom in and of itself is hard. So throughout my entire life, I was in and out of talk therapy, and I never felt it got to the root of what I was feeling and what I was experiencing. I then also believed in the American dream. If I do well in school, get good grades, graduate, get a good job, I'll be happy. And I did all that. I was also engaged and I got married and I said, okay, now I'll feel better and I'll feel happy. And that never happened. I still always felt this internal chaos and pain and suffering that I couldn't explain. And I said, all right, something's got to give. I have to try something different. I know at the time I wanted to eventually be a mom, and I didn't want to pass that pain and trauma down. So what I did was I found a peer support group, and it just so happened that that first session that I attended, there was a somatic breathwork facilitator. We had a group session, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But then she did free 5-minute one-on-one sessions afterwards. And the connection to my breath and my body and the ability to yell and release emotion and scream was such medicine that I had never experienced before. And I was able to release the emotions in my body that I didn't have the words for. So then I went on to get certified in this modality. And then I went on to become a mom. And I thought, I've babysat throughout my life. I've been a nanny. I've got this. Motherhood is not going to be that big of a deal. And it rocked my world. I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder everybody tries to prepare you for motherhood and give you their little tidbits of advice, because it's so much harder than I had ever realized. But I was also so grateful that I began to do the work of reconnecting with myself, reconnecting with my body, so that I can notice in my mothering of my daughter the patterns and cycles that were coming up that I don't want to repeat and carry on.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, so many pieces of your story, I think so many of us can relate to that idea of if we just do the right things, if we just hit these milestones, we will find happiness. And I know I just celebrated the 200th episode of this podcast and had somebody interview me. And that was a big piece of my story as well, of like feeling like I was going to find happiness and it just didn't come in that way. That's not how it works. Those external markers that we tie so much of what success looks like and what will get us to that place of feeling internally satisfied don't actually matter in the way that I think it's kind of sold to us when we our little kids, thinking about growing up and having our own kids. So definitely relate to that. So you said you started your healing journey before becoming a mom. When you did have your daughter, how did you notice things from your childhood and that experience coming up with your experience now of being a mom and mothering another person?
Yeah, I really began to understand why my mom as a single mom was so stressed growing up and how much of the invisible burden that she was carrying. And I noticed how much frustration and anger and rage started to come up. Now, I'm someone that I had an unmedicated birth. I chose to do a home birth, and it was a game changer. I feel like we can do an entire podcast episode on that. Just the empowerment and true transformation that you go through in giving birth. It's this entire identity shift. I went through that thinking, oh my gosh, if I can do that, I can do anything. And then I was in the postpartum trenches of, holy, this is really hard. Like, this is really, really hard. No wonder why my mom was stressed all the time and would yell and scream, because it's a lot. And like, I have my husband, I have a village, I have people to help, and I was still so overwhelmed. So I was able to just see that frustration, see that anger, see all these feelings that were arising and noticing, okay, I don't want to yell and scream at my child. I don't want to take it out on my family. I want to continue using the practices and tools that I've learned to work through these emotions and move through this energy so that we can have a calm and collected household as much of the time as possible.
Yeah, and having that foundation of understanding that type of healing, I imagine, was quite impactful in that, because when you are experiencing those just like wild emotions that so many of us experience when we have kids. I mean, the anger I think so many of us experience is unlike anything we've ever had coming out of our body before when we have kids. I mean, there's a reason the term mom rage exists, right? And so knowing that you can turn to those more body-based approaches to soothing yourself and healing yourself is huge. I want to dive into that a little bit, the idea of body-led healing and somatic work. Why don't approaches like talk therapy and just any other modality that maybe isn't getting at what's going on in the body, why don't those always work in the way that we maybe hope they will?
Yeah, this is because trauma, stress, it is stored in your nervous system. So the nervous system has multiple parts. And you mentioned my podcast, the Modern Matriarch Podcast. If you want to go into the details and the science of it, my very first 2 episodes go through all of it. But at a very high level, these 2 parts of our nervous system, one of them is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. We think of like survival mode. And I think these have been demonized over the years. Like, oh, if you're in one of these survival modes, it's a bad thing. But it's not. Your body is literally working to keep you alive. And a long time ago, if a predator was chasing us, right, if someone is chasing us, that literally helps you stay on Earth, stay in your body, right, not get hunted down. But in today's day and age, it can be something as simple as you open a text message from a friend and all of a sudden you freeze because you think they're mad at you or you think something is wrong. And then the other side of our nervous system, we have what's called rest and digest. This is when the body is really decompressing and the body naturally heals itself. So when we're sleeping, our cells are regenerating, right? Our body is recuperating, our muscles are really allowing themselves to get ready for the next day. But what can happen is if majority of the time we are stuck in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, our body actually doesn't have the time to rest and digest. It doesn't have the time to recuperate, for cells to regenerate. And that's why I think this body-led approach is so important, because so much of the healing industry over the years, talk therapy, mindset work, is just working with the mind. And yes, our mind is powerful. However, it's that missing piece of the mind-body connection and really feeling into your body and what it's trying to tell you and all the wisdom that it has to share with you.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit more, kind of that disconnection that can come when we're in survival mode, and just kind of laying out the fact that in motherhood, we oftentimes feel like we're in survival mode, whether that's because of just those little stressors that, like you said, can set us off of like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. This predator's chasing me. And it's like, no, it's just a little minor inconvenience that's happening. But also, there's just so much pressure and so many factors that lead to so many of us feeling at some point or another like we are in survival mode. How does that lead to a disconnection from self?
Yeah, so because the body is working so hard to protect us, when we go into any of these states that we've mentioned, what happens is the thinking mind actually shuts off. And that's important because the energy needs to be pushed to other areas of the body, right? If you're going to run away, you need to be able to run fast. So the energy needs to be in the body to do that. But what can happen is over time, you can experience, I'm going to say symptoms, right? Like disassociation. You are disconnected from your body. You can't feel anything from the head down. Your mind is racing. You have all these thoughts. Maybe you're someone that has intrusive thoughts. In my experience growing up, I wasn't connected to my body. If you told me, right, to feel my toes, I couldn't actually feel them. I could think of what they would feel like, but there was no actual sensation that was coming through. I would have lots of experiences where I would be on an airplane or on a train, and in my mind, these intrusive thoughts of planning for the worst case scenario. If this plane crashes right now, what am I going to do? What's my plan? And that was my body just getting ahead of trying to survive. It was planning for all the possible scenarios that it could. And when this happens, we are more disconnected from ourselves than we even realize. We can be in autopilot, so we can be living in a way that we think others are expecting us to be, expecting us to show up as. Maybe you're someone who feels like you need to be perfect all the time or be the good girl. And that's how you were raised to be. That's your conditioning. And now it's turned into, it's just autopilot. It's how you navigate the world, but it's not in connection with your true essence and who you want to be. Maybe you're someone that desires to be a little bit outside of that good girl framework, outside of that image, and show up a little different. I've spoken with clients who are like, oh, I would really love to put some color in my hair, but that's frowned upon in my family. And it's like, all right, let's work through that. Let's connect with that desire in your body and leave everyone else's opinions and thoughts on the outside and just feel into who you want to show up as and who you want to be in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that disconnection is so real. Again, it's like having had a recent conversation about my own journey. And that was another huge thing we talked about, is how going from childhood through adolescence and into adulthood, the ways in which I felt completely disconnected from myself and just kind of abandoned all of those internal pieces. And then motherhood on top of that can do so much more in kind of stripping ourselves of that connection. When we think about these body-led ways of reconnecting, what does that actually look like?
I love this question. So for every woman, it's going to be different. You're going to be able to find what works for you. But of course, being a breathwork facilitator, my favorite is as simple as taking a few deep breaths, pausing and deep breathing into that belly. We're in a world that is in such a rush and go, go, go all the time that our breathing is actually shallow. Our chest will barely rise and fall. Whereas if you have little ones and you watch them, when they breathe, their full belly expands and contracts because they're taking these full breaths that are just nourishing them. And so you can start there. Take some deep breaths, see how that feels. If anything at any time feels too much, you can stop. You could say, okay, not right now. It's not a good time, and walk away. You also want to practice listening to your body more, noticing subtle cues. Am I thirsty? Do I want a drink of water? Do I have to go to the bathroom? Something that was really big for me in my journey that I didn't realize until years later, because hindsight is 2020. In college, I was an athlete and I was drinking 100 ounces of water a day, and I wasn't recognizing the initial cues of, oh my gosh, I have to pee. It wasn't until I'm about to pee my pants, let me run to the bathroom, that I realized that I actually had to go. And so these little tiny messages that your body is always sending you, hunger cues, tired cues, and this idea of in motherhood, there's so much pressure, and it's not explicitly taught, but there are these subtle inclinations of, oh, you're supposed to self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. You are supposed to just provide and care for everyone else. Like, no, you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anyone else. And if you get a cue, your body is tired, allow yourself to go lay down for 5 minutes. I heard a term a couple of years ago when I was in postpartum of horizontal parenting. Lay on the couch for 5 minutes, let your body just rest, and your child can do tummy time, or your child can read a book or play with something independently, and you can get off your feet and show your body that it's safe to take a moment for yourself.
I love that idea of horizontal parenting, because that really is such a, that was one of the first things when I was dealing with postpartum anxiety. One of the first things I recognized that I could do to get out of a panic was lay flat. It didn't really matter what was going on around me. So I love that idea. And I'm thinking of ads I've seen for the t-shirts. They're usually marketed towards dads, of course, because with dads, it's a lot more acceptable of lay down and parent your kids that way. But with the racetracks on the back, the kids can drive the cars on the back of the shirt. So thinking about the cues that so many of us miss in our bodies, because in one way or another, we've been kind of conditioned out of listening. Obviously, if it's not coming naturally, it's not just going to switch. Do you have any advice for getting in the habit of really asking yourself and getting out of autopilot to say, hey, am I hungry right now? What am I feeling right now?
It's about taking those intentional pauses every day and making that a practice. When we practice something for 21 days, that's when it can become a habit. And if you're someone who's always in your head, your thoughts are racing, you're thinking about your next to-do list or your next scheduled appointment you have to get to, it can be really helpful to set a reminder in your phone. Put something in your calendar or set a timer and say, okay, check in with your body. Take a minute, 60 seconds. You can find 60 seconds for yourself every single day. I promise it is possible. And pause and say, what does my body need right now? And sometimes the answer might be, I don't know. That's okay. That's perfect too, because you're starting the practice of recognizing and listening of what your body has to tell you. And over time, it's going to transition out of, I don't know, to, oh, I need something to drink. Oh, I could really use a cold water right now. Ooh, a matcha latte. Sounds good, right? Not just these cravings that we have, but truly what our body is asking us for. And so the more you do it on a regular basis, the more that it's going to become a habit.
Yeah, I think about how that care and the intentionality is also telling yourself that you care. It's telling yourself this is something that I am prioritizing. So maybe next time I'll just notice, because I'm in that mindset, in that headspace of what I feel, what I need matters, and how huge that can be when we are in a pattern of just caring about everyone else and not necessarily feeling like we have the capacity to care for ourselves, or like you said, not even feeling like we're supposed to. We're supposed to be abandoning ourselves. We're supposed to be sacrificing for everyone else. If we show ourselves something different, that has such a massive impact.
And I will say the power of the pause. Mm-hmm. It's not just, right, oh, my timer goes off, I'm going to check in with myself. You'll start to do it when you're in the car and your kids are screaming. Instead of automatically reacting and yelling at them, you'll be like, all right, I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a deep breath. And now when I'm calm, or at least a little more calm, it helps my children come back to a baseline of calm, because our children model after us. They watch everything we do and they are learning from us. And if we just pause and take a deep breath in those moments of overwhelm, in those moments of frustration, they learn that they can do that too.
And the ripple effect of that, the impact when our kids are responding to that more intentional, calm, regulated response, there's a lot less inputs, I will say, that they're going to be giving when they're also not just reacting right back to us, right? Like that's only going to amplify and build everything up when we're exploding one right after the other. And yeah, I think that's a really important point there, like how it changes things with our kids when we take that moment to pause. So something that is a major focus of this podcast is identity and self-discovery, specifically in the realm of motherhood. Again, when we are moms, it's not uncommon for us to feel disconnected from ourselves, our bodies, our minds, who we are. And I'm curious what you see the connection between how in our bodies we are, and then that kind of more like mental, who am I? How do I exist in this world? How do I want to show up? How are those things linked? And how does focusing on the body in these ways influence then our identity and our sense of self?
Yeah, so the body can provide so much clarity if you think about it as the body and your heart and what your heart is telling you, and the mind and what your mind is telling you. Sometimes there can be a disconnect. There can be competing interests. And you mentioned, right, postpartum anxiety. As somebody that I grew up with lots of anxiety most of my life, the mind can automatically go to fear and go to these thoughts around, okay, what's the safest choice? What helps keep me safe? But then if we come into our heart, and again, that pause of like, what feels true for me? What feels nourishing to my body? What feels expansive? What feels like my heart pulls forward a little bit towards that thing? You can then begin to navigate if there's a disconnect, if there's conflict, or if there's alignment between what your mind is saying and what your heart is telling you, to really move forward. And when there's alignment, it's easier to take those little steps because you can feel the fear, you can acknowledge it, but then you have that empowerment to do it anyway because you know it's really calling you, and it's what is aligned in your right identity in the mind, in your identity in the body, in your soul's purpose, and just allowing everything to come together for you on your path in this lifetime.
I love that so much. And what I'm really like hearing from that is when we're doing it all in our mind, there's so much room for the shoulds to come in and to influence us. And sometimes we don't know what's ours and what is societal, what is the conditioning. And when we are tuning into the heart, I love the way you put that, like tuning into the heart and like what we really want, like inside in our bodies, what actually feels right. That's a great way to not fall into those traps of like, yeah, this is the right thing. This is what I want because it's what's right. It's like, no, what actually is in alignment with what's going to be best for me in this moment, the best choice for me. And I think any tool that can get us closer to making the decisions that are like, they're ours. They're not the external world's decisions. They're our decisions. That is huge. You have mentioned in the past that the powers that be don't want us connected to our innate power. Can you say more about that, what you mean by that, and why it matters, especially for women and moms?
Yeah, so in our world today, right, recording this in 2026, I say the powers that be because it can turn very like conspiracy theorists, but I see it as like, right, the 1% that have majority of the money in this world, and they're making decisions for us. And a lot of the time, how you make decisions on behalf of a population is through coercion and control. And when you are connected to your body, when you have bodily autonomy and you are secure in your sense of self and decisions that are right for you and your family, it's really hard for these external pressures and decisions to coerce you, to control you into making a decision that goes along with what they want you to do. You're really able to step into your power and say, yeah, I disagree with them. It doesn't have to be, right, a whole argument. You don't need to get on a podium and preach how bad they are and how your way is the right way. You just have this sense of knowing that you can make decisions for yourself and for your family, despite what anyone else thinks, despite what anyone else says, and move forward in a way that feels so good. And it's funny because I recently recorded a podcast episode with a mom who is a former tech executive, and she was talking about the corporate world and how in America, the corporate world is no longer set up for women. It never really was, but now it's becoming more and more clear. And you can see that in roles, especially, right? We're saying mothers, we're expected to sacrifice ourselves. We're expected to give up our identity and our desires to mother. That's a form of control. That's a form of saying, abandon yourself, do what we're telling you to do, not what you actually want. And when you bring that power back to you, it's game changing because, again, then no one can have any say or control over what you do. You can just move forward in alignment with what works for you and what works for your family.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up so many incredible, important points there. And I think something I just want to pull out is the fact that we are mothering within systems that are not created for us to have individual identities within that society, right? Like, that's just not what our role is, quote, supposed to be to these powers that be, right? I think most people listening to this podcast will probably agree with that. I love the idea of personal empowerment and the innate connection we can have with ourselves being beneficial to us as individuals, being beneficial to us within our homes, but also in a massive way beneficial to the good of a society that is maybe being influenced and coerced or just guided to a system that supports that 1%, that is helping not the general person, not the people that, like, for the most part, most of us care about, right? And I think that's a really cool duality in the fact that it's for us, the work is for us, it's for our families, but it also has this really important result in terms of our world as well.
Yeah, it's like this greater ripple effect that takes place, right? When we're caring for ourselves, when we're making the best decisions for our family, that's just going to ripple out into everyone that we meet and everyone that we touch. And it's really going to change our world for the better. And I love this conversation because so many people don't realize that if, right, the powers that be are the 1%, yes, right, they have the most money, they make all these decisions. But if the rest of us are the 99%, that's pretty powerful. And small decisions and small steps and changes over time create a revolution and it creates change. It just might take a while for us to see it.
I think we are in a place where we have to hear that. That's something that needs to be said, and we need to be reminded of that, especially in moments where we feel like we maybe don't have power, because it is wild sometimes what is happening with that elite class. I want to get into this idea of remothering. You have a brand called Remothering Mamas, which I feel like that title, that name communicates a lot. What does it mean to you to remother yourself, and why is that the foundation of everything else?
I love this question. So, as I mentioned, so much of my journey was dealing with generational trauma and abuse and neglect in my upbringing. And as I dove into working with my body, reconnecting with my body, what came up was, oh my gosh, I can learn to unconditionally love myself. I can learn to give myself grace and compassion. And so many women and moms need this. And at the time, I was offering personal finance coaching, and then I got my breathwork certification. And I was like, all right, I want to combine these aspects. And reparenting never really landed with me, maybe because I wasn't raised with a father figure, so I don't have this idea of like being fathered. But I was like, the unconditional love, the grace, the compassion. Like, I want to work with moms and remothering themselves and learning to give that to themselves through the wisdom of their bodies and all that their bodies have to share with them and have to teach them. So let's just call my brand Remothering Mamas and go from there. So that's where the name comes from and the work that I'm really passionate about.
That's beautiful. And I love that there's a piece of the fact that regardless of what we come to adulthood, we come to motherhood with, whether that is incredibly supportive parenting, incredibly supportive mothering or not, there still is the opportunity for that mothering to happen. It's just from ourselves, and that's really beautiful. How does the work that you do change how the women you work with are able to show up for their kids on a day-to-day basis? And more than that, like show up for themselves in all the ways.
It's really reconnecting to those desires and what a mom wants. So I have a client, I've been working with her for years, and she came to one of my in-person group breathwork sessions. And afterwards, she shared, after this 60-minute journey of just breathing, she had this powerful experience of, she doesn't really celebrate her birthday. Her birthday every year feels more draining and negative than it does like a positive celebration, which most of us, I think, are used to. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with Disney. I love Disney World. My son's about to be 3 this year for my birthday, which is in a couple weeks. I want to take him to Disney. And she said it was such a desire that came through and felt so true in her body and so possible that after that night, she went home and she booked their flights, she booked their tickets, she booked everything, and was able to say it was the best birthday that she was able to celebrate for herself, but also for her son, because she got to share something that she loves so much with him and rewire this pattern around her birthday that she had previously been carrying. So many moms come in and they find these areas of their lives that they're just not feeling satisfied with, that they're seeing there's some conditioning or lessons around, and they're able to just let that go to feel what's true for them and what the most next doable step is that will allow them to bring more unconditional love, receive more grace, more compassion, more peace, more prosperity in their lives, and take those steps moving forward so that the change is lasting and it's not just like a short-term instant gratification in the moment. It really ripples throughout their life and the life that they're creating.
Yeah, that idea of the ripple effect, I think, is like, it just keeps coming up in this conversation. But I think that is so, there's a reason for that. It's because when you are able to find that peace, find that clarity, I almost have the vision of everything else just kind of melting away. Of course, there are so many influences on every single thing that we do. We exist in the context we're in, and yet we have the ability to turn inward and to rely on ourselves in these ways. And when you can do that, the ripple effects in all of the ways we've talked about are just inevitable. And that is such a powerful thing. Like, it just feels like I have the power to live the life that I want to live, to make the changes that I want to make, to do things in a way that bring me joy. And that's a cool feeling to recognize that. And again, I think for so many moms, we have been in a place, or we are currently in a place, where we feel powerless, we feel disconnected. And so to know that that's possible and to know that we have that within us is just a really cool thing.
Yeah, and to our point about before, right, there's all these external voices and noises, and like you said, it just kind of melts away, and you're very clear on, okay, this is for me, this is what I want, this is what I desire, and that feeling of, oh my gosh, it's actually possible, like, I can make this happen, I can do it, it's life-changing.
Yeah. So for a mom listening right now who is maybe in that place of feeling disconnected and probably overwhelmed, there's lots of noise, how the heck am I supposed to stop and figure this out right now? I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the money to invest in a breathwork retreat, whatever it is. because there's always something. There's always some reason that we can't right now. Where should she start in her journey to just reconnect a little bit more with the body and herself?
Yeah, start with really simple practices like drinking water or flavored water, getting outside in the sun, putting your feet in the grass, anything that allows your body to feel a sensation, right? Giving yourself a hug and actually feeling your fingertips touch your skin. Maybe it's a warm sweater or a warm blanket. Anything that's really tangible that you can feel to begin nourishing your body in little ways and allow that to compound over time. And then maybe you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to, right, invest in a one-on-one service. I want to invest in a massage or cranial sacral therapy or a breathwork session, or, oh, I want to invest in an entire retreat. All these little efforts will build up over time. And before you know it, you're like, I can't even believe I was in that place months or years ago. Look how much has changed since then.
I want to dive in a little bit more to one little piece you said there of doing something to just feel a sensation. Why is being intentional about having an experience where you have like a physical sensation really useful?
What it does is it starts to gently reestablish that connection with your body in a way that is doable. So trauma, the way that I define it, is anything that is too much or too soon for the body to handle. Mm-hmm. And if a mom feels she's not in a place to invest the time, energy, money in something like breath work, in a retreat, in a full session, starting with something as simple as sensations in the body, something that's tangible, right? Touching your skin, feeling your skin. It's gentle and it's enough that it's like, all right, it's safe to be in my body. It's safe to have this connection with my heart. And from there, it can open so much within you in a way, again, that's doable and feels safe without overwhelming your system.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you a question that I ask every guest here on the Sparkle Project. Obviously, a major theme of the podcast is our sparkles, our innate internal light that just shines out of us and makes us who we are in a sense. And it's something that can definitely get buried under all the roles and responsibilities, conditioning, traumas, right? It's something that I think a lot of women struggle to let shine in that way. How do you protect your sparkle?
Something that I have always loved since I was little is dancing. And so while I don't do it regularly right now, I do want to get back into a practice of just putting on music, dancing around my office, dancing around my house. And something else that I found is really powerful is since I was little, my voice has kind of been shut off. I got to a point where I was scared to sing in front of people to make sound. And so now I'm finding singing as a form of expression. Just for me, I feel that sparkle. I feel how powerful and healing it is to sing along to a song at the top of my lungs and how much silly joy it brings me.
Oh, I love like how you lit up when you were saying that. Like how cool just to find something that heals a little childhood part of you in such a, like that's such a simple, easy thing to do, right? To bring something in for yourself, to sing along to songs in your car as loud as you want. Just let it out, feel it, and how impactful that can be while also being so simple.
Anyone can do it. Yeah. If you're watching this or listening to this right now, you have a phone, just pull up some music and go at it. Play your favorite song.
We love nice and accessible ways to kind of, I don't know, get what we need out of life. Sara, how can listeners find you and what should they be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is remotheringmamas.com. I am also over on Instagram at Remothering Mamas. You can find a link for the podcast. You can find recorded programs there. I have a very simple 20-minute Receive Prosperity practice. It's an audio. You can do it with your kids around. You can listen to it anywhere on the go. It just allows you to deeply breathe, listen to some music, connect to your body, and open your heart to receiving. And I want to offer that to all of your listeners for 50% off. So it comes down to only $11, and we'll put the link in the show notes.
Amazing. I am so excited to get to share that. I think anyone listening who there's something in here that is resonating with you and you want an intentional place to kind of start your own journey or continue your own journey to connection inward, that is a really awesome resource. So thank you for offering that. Sara, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing in this really beautiful, empowering conversation with me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much to everybody tuning in. Keep on shining. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sparkle Project. Loved what you heard? Share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to leave a rating and review to show your support for the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.